Listen closely and you'll hear record after record after record smashing. Ash makes it a Baker's Sutton at Brands Hatch.
Hello and welcome back to the British Touring Car Podcast. We have just witnessed a little bit of history this afternoon. You'll be joining us as we review each race after it happens, changing up the format this weekend just to see how it works, see if we're going to continue it into next season. And of course, Russ joins me once again.
Yeah, so we've done podcast records after each race rather than all together a couple of days later where it's still fresh in the mind because it's final day and a lot happens on final day.
Chaos has happened today.
Chaos has happened today. Of course, the big question was going to be, can Sutter win this four title? Yes. And what would happen everywhere else? But yeah, because of the way the day worked, carnage sort of erupted from race 2 onwards, and particularly in race number 3, which is going to be a long one, I think.
Yeah, it certainly is. But there is only one place to start, and that is on Saturday with qualifying. So qualifying on Saturday then, it was a all-dry affair, and one with not much action, in all honesty. The biggest action of the session was George Gamble going into the wall on the GP loop. Just looked like he'd lost the back end before getting into Sterling's. Spun the car around, and then just as he tried to flick it back the other way, went careering off onto the grass and backwards into the tyre wall, a little bit like Camish up at Donington, but with far less damage. He was actually able to crawl the car back to the pits, although a red flag did need to come out to fix the tyre wall.
It's weird how it's weird. It's weird how cars are bouncing off the barriers this year and being okay, because I'm still. I might have to contact somebody at Physics University to understand how Morgan hit the wall at Silverstone and still finished high in the points, because I don't. We've seen it a couple of times this year where they are bound, and that's how it should be. Obviously, we don't want cars buried in the barrier, but it's just surprising that this year in particular, maybe I'm just noticing it more, but it does seem that cars are.
Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. I think Camish, it was probably a much higher speed. Although you'd have thought that the gravel would have done something to slow it down.
But there's also complete brake failure, which means he could do nothing to slow the car down. You'd imagine Gamble can pump the brake whilst going. Even while you're going across grass, it's not as optimal. You're still reducing it even by fractions, whereas obviously Camish is going off over 100 mile an hour.
Yeah. So obviously red flag was brought out. Gamble did have to stop his session there, and his fastest lap was taken away from him, which meant that he would start down, I think, in 21st overall. But at that point, Sutton from Butcher from Ingram were the top.
Oh, sorry. You're close.
But yeah, Sutton from Butcher from Ingram at that point, it was fairly clear that the two title challengers were going to be up there and challenging at the front of the grid. And at that point in the Jack Sears, Doble was leading from Patterson and then Watson. Interestingly enough, and you may not know this, Doble did not get his extra point for pole position at Silverstone, because he didn't actually start the race from pole position because of his extra formation.
Oh, really?
He did. So he didn't gain that extra point.
So you have to actually start from the top.
Which is a rule that I didn't know, but they brought it up in qualifying, which I thought was a good place to put it in.
Well, it is, because that's educated me, but I think that's harsh, because I understand it was taken away from you because you've lost your lap or whatever, but I think it's harsh that he did nothing wrong on the Saturday.
No.
I think that's harsh, personally.
But yeah, to gain that extra point, you have to start from pole position on the Sunday of race 1.
That's really hard. I don't like that.
Which is unusual.
Like that.
But we'll see whether that gets amended for next season or whether it is kept.
I wonder if that's just one of those really weird rules that was written a long time ago and it's never happened. And that's weird. I don't like that because he's done nothing wrong on the Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
As I said, Gamble was out of the session due to excess damage as well. You could see where the front split had dropped off the car and they were trying to gaffer tape it back together in the pit lane. So I think it was just too much of a issue to put the car back together.
We wouldn't have been allowed back out anyway, would he? Having caused the red flag, he's disqualified from the session.
It's really difficult because we've seen red flags flown before, and people that have apparently caused them then continue on because they haven't had to have outside assistance, which is what he didn't have. But I just think on this occasion, it was also the damage on the car that put him out for the rest of the session.
They need to abort that. If you cause red lap, you lose your fastest lap. You can still continue if you can continue. That should. simplify it. Make that,
Sutton then went on to set another fast lap, taking his pole time out to a quarter of a second quicker than Butcher. Butcher set his time early on. He wasn't going to improve on it. He said in a little interview midway through during the red flag that he hooked that lap up as perfect as he can, and he was going to really struggle to beat it, even though he still had 2 new sets of tyres at that point. And for the rest of the session, not much happened.
No, I mean, the thing that stands out for me is how much One Motorsport struggled. Josh could be the highest placed Honda in 16th. Jade was second last, and Moffat was 20th. So a tracker, we kind of bigged them up a little bit in the preview from previous years.
Yep.
They've looked really poor. I think the only thing that stood out to me in particular was Bobby Thompson up in 5th.
Bobby up in 5th, yeah.
Man.
Sutton equals the pole record.
Yes, he does.
Of James Thompson back in 2003, I believe.
Oh, it must, around about that time.
Getting 6 for the season. Napa taking 9 out of the 10 poles this year, which is astonishing, really. All credit to Doble last time out at Silverstone for breaking that.
That's going to be a hell of a quiz question 20 years' time. He was the only driver or team to stop Napa achieving a clean sweep.
So the top 3 were Sutton, Butcher and Ingram, and in the Jack Sears, Doble outqualified Watson from them Pearson. And as you say, Bobby Thompson up there in 5th for a brilliant performance.
Yeah, I think the only last thing to mention is that with pole position for Sutton, obviously he gets an extra point in the championship, which makes it even easier for him to take the crown in race 1. And also, not Jack Sears, no, the Wingfoot Award winner for 2023. And they have made the trophy nicer, but he is the champion of that as well. So
nice shiny silver one this year, which you much prefer the look of.
It doesn't look like it's a foam foot on a stick, does it? I mean, it doesn't look like a year 6 student created it in Arts and Crafts, does it? I mean, it's nicer.
I think Jake Hill's going to be a little bit disappointed compared to the one he got last season.
Definitely, absolutely. So. But yeah, I mean, this does now mean that Sutton and Napa can take a clean sweep across everything, apart from, well, they can still win the Jack Sears, but
effectively
at this stage, they can win everything that they went in for.
Ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous.
I don't think that's ever been done.
No, but we'll get on to race 1 next.
So with race 1, there was a tyre split. Who was going to start on softs and mediums? Basically, everyone at the front started on softs, apart from Rowbottom and Butcher, who both started on mediums. Butcher slightly inexplicably started on mediums, but I got the feeling that from his interviews that he didn't want to get involved in the title, in the title fight, and didn't want to sort of be responsible for having a fight with one of the 2 cars and then potentially ending their race. That's the vibe I got, and fair enough.
It was a bit of a strange grid interview, wasn't it, with Louise, in that he said that he was going to go on softs and try and go all out, but then it appears that the choice had already been made, had already been submitted, that he was on the medium. So it was a bit of a weird one there, but yeah. Yeah,
BMW chose to run a split strategy. That was confirmed on the way to the grid.
You're pleased to see that, surely.
Yeah, I mean, it's only come 7 or 8 rounds too late into the season, so that's fine, isn't it? Obviously, I don't want to repeat with the Snetterton problem, should we say.
Yep.
Also, BMW have got nothing to lose, apart from the fact that they might not get the Manufacturers' Championship this season. Gornall started off his return to touring cars with a fantastic start, didn't he, Sam, with a drive shaft issue, so he started from the pit lane.
Not even starting.
Did he not even get out in the end?
No, he didn't even get out to complete any laps. So my prediction for him this weekend, hopefully, is he's got 2 more races to come true in, but we'll see.
The less we say about that, probably the better. Butch had the best start off the line and did try and sort of hang it wheel to wheel with Sutton around the outside of Paddock Hill Bend, but Sutton was able to hold on to the inside, and this little fighting allowed Ingram to nip through on Butcher around Druids. That then gave Ingram a chance to lunge it into the into Surtees, into the Grand Prix section. However, Sutton was wise to the attack, and that pretty much is the race in a nutshell. Sutton drove off to victory.
Yeah, I think Ingram's a little bit too far back. He had to try and stick his nose in there, try and put Ash offline at least, but it really didn't work out. But the 2 of them were far quicker than everyone else.
Absolutely, they were off down the field. Butcher sort of held back the tide a little bit on the medium tyres. This did allow Thompson to catch up and start to put a little bit of pressure on. Sutton checked out the front of a new lap record set within the race.
Just used his hybrid early to do that, didn't he?
The hybrid is pointless to talk about, Sam. He took pole yesterday with one lap of hybrid. I don't understand why it's even still a discussion, but I don't want to be a curmudgeon and go over old ground again, so we'll leave that one alone. Bobby then got himself into third as he swept past Butcher going on to the Grand Prix loop. Butcher would then come back a swinging, shall we say.
Yeah.
It got a little bit bolshy between the pair of them. A bit of contact was made. It was all fine until Butcher ran Thompson wide onto the grass. I thought that was probably just on the line of fair racing, but
Yeah, Butcher was a decent way ahead. It wasn't
Yeah.
like Bobby was up to his B post or up to his door or anything like that. I think he was well in his rights to run as wide as he could. But a little bit of debris came off when the two collected each other.
brave by Butcher, given that Ingram was penalised for daring to race Hill
Yeah.
a couple of weekends ago. So, yeah, I think it was just about on the right line of of fair racing. We then had Dobble being a bit of a cork in the bottle. He was leading the Jack Sears at this point. He was into the top 10, but he was on the medium tyre as well. He was a little bit slow. There was a big pack sort of circling in behind him. A bit further up the road, Rowbottom was holding the BMWs back at bay. That was quite interesting in the way that the BMWs on the soft tyre were seemingly unable to get past Rowbottom on the medium for certainly most of the race anyway. I did get the feeling that perhaps Rowbottom was being deliberately slow. It looked that way. Obviously, we're not at the track, hence why we're here. So TV can be a little bit, it can be a little bit deceiving. It just looked to me like he was a little bit slow.
I do wonder whether he was trying to bring Camish through the pack, because there was those two and two BMWs. And by the end of the race, he'd let Camish past. I just wonder whether that was for manufacturer and championship points for the team.
Quite possibly. Rowbottom is on the worst tyre out of that pack.
Yeah.
There is that to bear in mind. Jake Hill is battling man flu in the stand as well, so he wasn't particularly on it this race either. But yeah, it just looked a little bit slow on the TV, but whether that was or not is another question. As I mentioned, Hill ended up losing out with 2 places lost when Camish and Turkington both managed to get through. He's not looked on it all weekend. Obviously, he's not well, so that's not a great surprise. Bobby wasn't deterred by his skirmish with Butcher and did come back for more and started the attack again. This led to him getting past as Butcher shot off the road with a puncture, which I called straight away.
At the same corner where they had their big battle in the first place. Wondering whether it was a little bit of debris, maybe that he's caught on the tyre, just to give it a little slit on the sidewall or something like that.
Hard, maybe.
That as well.
But yeah, I called that straight away. I'm quite impressed with myself.
Yeah.
And then you confirmed it as he came to the pit lane, and then I think only 7 laps later, it was confirmed by commentary that it was a puncture. Yeah. Anyway, Turkington finally got himself past Rowbottom. We didn't see the move. We're not allowed to see the move. There's replays and on boards and whatnot. We then saw sort of the biggest action of the race, if you like, when Doble was sent off at Stirling's into the barrier, ending his Jack Sears hunt, unfortunately for him. Again, we're not allowed replays of all the onboards in the cars for reasons best known to the ITV. So we've only got the rear angle to show this, which the rear angle shows Jelly punting Doble up the arse. But you can't. That only gives half the story.
Yeah.
From that angle, it doesn't look particularly good on Jelly, and it does seem to be Jelly's fault. But as has been pointed out in the commentary, you don't know has Doble moved across the line? Has he braked too early? You need to see other replays.
Certainly a wide shot at the very least to see what both cars are doing, where they're positioned on the circuit, because it may be a case of Jelly was trying to go down the outside to try and get a better run out the corner. But yeah, it's difficult to tell.
And the daft thing is that the stewards get all the other angles, so they're obviously available.
Yeah,
I know we talked about it before. It blows my mind that in this series that 3 people in a room are allowed to look at the angles and then give a punishment, but we're not allowed to see it at home. It's very strange. This brought out the safety car while Doble was recovered. They couldn't recover him fully, so they had to cover his section where he'd gone off under yellows for the rest of the race. But he did leave us with 2 racing laps when the race was finally restarted. Sutton controlled the restart perfectly, as you'd expect. Ingram had half a go on the first of the 2 racing laps, but
yeah, he had 1 lap of hybrid left. He used it on that restart lap because that was his best opportunity that he was going to try and get past him. But as you say, Sutton managed it well. He was able to pull out a little bit of a gap, and then coming on to the final lap, the game was up, really, wasn't it?
Absolutely. So Sutton is, shocking everybody, spoiler alert, a 4-time champion. He has also taken the most wins in a season, beating Giovanardi's previous record. He is the youngest 4-time champion. He's the only champion to win it in rear-wheel drive and front-wheel drive.
checklist.
Checklist. Obviously, yesterday, as we mentioned in the qualifying, he took the joint record for most poles in the season with James Thompson with 6.
And the Wingfoot Award, don't forget that.
It looks smarter this year.
He'll be really pleased with that.
Well, having knocked it all year, because they have redone the design. I still think it's a pointless award, but it does look nicer this year at least. But yeah, I mean, obviously there's 2 races to go. We're recording this slightly differently this week, as we've mentioned in the intro stuff. So we'll see what happens with races 2 and 3. But yeah, Sutton is a 4-time champion, and his interview afterwards suggests that he ain't done yet.
No, certainly not. It will be interesting to see how race 2 and 3 pan out for the rest of this weekend, which will be coming up next. But yeah, fireworks could go off now.
Well,
now the leash has been let go. It'll be interesting to see what finally happens.
Well, absolutely. The main championship is won. Maybe Ingram and Sutton will be a bit more bashy. Maybe not. But we'll have to see how that one pans out. Obviously, it's still the manufacturers to play for Napa and for BMW as well. The teams I think BMW. Dick Bennett said they couldn't win the teams. Must be scored a slightly different way because they haven't looked at the.
Yeah,
I thought they could do. Having looked at it yesterday,
the gap has been closed in manufacturers. I think down to 12 points as well. So going into the final race, there is some bits and pieces to play for. Yeah,
absolutely. So. Yeah, there's a few bits, as you say, left on the table. The Jack Sears is absolutely still open for discussion as well. Watson won race 1's Jack Sears with Thompson Osborne rather second in that, and Osborne is now the second place person in that championship. And also, just before we sort of go through the top results, big shout out to Bobby Thompson, who has returned to the championship in a car that looks awful in everybody else's hands. Let's be honest about it. It does. It looks really bad.
Yeah. And
he's taken a third. I'd say he took the third fairly comfortably as well.
Yeah, it was. I mean, yes, he was on the soft tyre. Okay, there were a few other drivers around him on the mediums, but he was able to keep the pressure upon Butcher, possibly forcing the mistake. Maybe he ran wide and collected that puncture.
Well, Butcher had been given a warning for track limits only a couple of laps before, hadn't he?
Yeah.
So quite possibly did the damage then.
But then kept his composure to keep Turkington behind him towards the end of the race in those last 2 laps.
Well, to be fair, Turkington didn't even trouble him. Thompson's pace, he always goes well at Brands, and his qualifying yesterday, as you mentioned, was brilliant. And to get him on a podium, I just hope that, obviously, you might have seen the Autosport, I think it was Autosport, article about this week. Obviously, Matt Neal is singing his praises. I just hope that somebody takes him next year, and I hope that team isn't hard in that way, because I think, as Tim has said on the commentary, he deserves a shot at a team that has got a more competitive car week in, week out, because he's very good.
Yeah, it'll be interesting with the backing of Matt Neal and possibly Barry Ploughman as well, whether we could see him maybe go back to, or go over to One Motorsport. Obviously, dynamics have given the cars.
I'm not sure that the Honda's more competitive than they could put.
No, that's it might be next season. We don't know what's going to happen next season.
Well, to be fair, if it takes Ploughman across, the one weekend Ploughman was at 1, they looked really good.
Yeah,
maybe. But yeah, anyway, so the top 15 points scoring place then. Ash Sutton, 4-time champion with the fastest lap of the race, took home the win. Just his confirmation that the fastest lap was 1:30.244. Tom Ingram gave it his best throughout the season and kept him honest, and has really offered a lot to this championship. Finished second in the race and will finish second in the standings as well, you'd suspect. Bobby Thompson, as we mentioned, claiming the podium. Colin Turkins in 4th, Camish in 5th, with Jake Hill 6th, Dan Robot into 7th, Jelly 8th as it stands, possibly a penalty coming, Collard in 9th, Adam Morgan in 10th, Aaron Taylor-Smith 11th, 12th for Josh Cook, 13th for Tom Chilton, 14th for Andrew Watson and the Jack Sears win, and 15th for Dan Lloyd, the best place other Cooper Leon. And I suppose in terms of championships, this does put me ahead in our championship of predictions, because Sutton took a race win. So I've now gone, but
yeah,
it's a different format. We're keeping it fluid. As it stands, I am
ever-changing, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. As it stands, I'm currently ahead, but there's a long way to go.
Yeah, certainly will. We'll bring you race 2 next. So before race 2 started, Napa had a small livery change for Sutton's car. In the gold Napa sponsorship on the bonnet and on the side of the car, made it a little bit more difficult to read, but you could kind of see that sort of thing coming, couldn't you, once he'd won the championship in race 1?
Absolutely.
Starting the race then, Camish was the top driver on softs, along with Robot and Collard. The rest of them were pretty much on mediums. So it'll be interesting to see how they came through the field. Gornall will be taking the start this time after his drive shaft issues in race 1. It'd be interesting to see how he would compete. And also, Stephen Jelly got a 3-place grid drop for the incident involving Dobble in race 1.
Yes, I have the
Official
thing here. It's a breach of Motorsport UK General Regulation 12.21.4, causing a collision, repetition of serious mistakes, or the appearance of a lack of control over the car. He was given an official reprimand, and it counted as a strike, which carried a further 3-place grid penalty, and he's awarded 2 penalty points against his licence.
That's a fairly cold and shut case, isn't it, really?
It is, as Doble said on the way to the grid, that's all well and good, but it doesn't help him. That's his championship done. Jelly has
moments.
More moments than not this season had these kind of things, unfortunately.
It's a shame, really, as well, because he's went well in race 1 and continued to go well in race 2. Turkington got off to a good start in race 2, tried to get in between Thompson and Ingram off the start, but Ingram closed that gap very quickly, and then went on the outside of Thompson going up to Druids, and then there was a touch, and we think it was probably more from Camish than it was from Thompson on the rear end of Turkington's car, don't we?
Yeah, it's difficult to tell because of the lack of cameras in place. But to me, whoever made the contact, it's first lap bunching. It's unfortunate the way it ended because obviously something clearly broke on Collins' car, and then blindsided Pearson catches the back of Collins' car, which fires him across the racing line, which in turn takes out Crease. So a fairly innocuous
concertina effect, wasn't it?
Yeah, fairly innocuous rub ends up in the dominoes falling in quite a tremendous style. But
I think it was probably a toe link or something broken first of all. Obviously, we won't fully know with then how Pearson managed to collect him. Did quite a lot of damage to all 3 cars, really, suspension-wise.
Well, no doubt at the end of the weekend, Colin will put up a post explaining exactly what happened, and we'll know for sure.
Yeah, so as a result, we had 3 cars parked up by the side of the track, and the safety car was deployed. Camish managed to get Thompson on the restart fairly comfortably, and by this point, Butcher was already up to 14th on lap 6, which completely passed me by, but he made the most of the mess at the back and got through fairly swiftly. The next incident of note involved Gornall, Osborne, Edwards, all of those drivers in that sort of area, about 5 of them coming up into Druids, eventually went into a 3 wide all the way round Druids, which had Gornall on the inside, Osborne in the middle, and Edwards on the outside. It looked as if Osborne came off the worst from that, although he did continue, which I didn't think he was going to at first.
No, and I felt for Edwards because she was running close to the points, and that's been the story of her season. Every time she's been close, something has happened that has meant she doesn't get the points, which is a pity. For this particular one, I think it's partly what happens when you race closely down the end of the pack. I also think it's partly to do with, without naming names, certain drivers and their abilities to race like that in that part of the pack. There's a reason why accidents and stuff that happens further down the pack.
Yep, all bunched up together. Aaron Taylor-Smith was then the next driver in the weekend to suffer a puncture. Consequently, the tyre almost delaminated and chucked the front wing off. We saw a load of debris coming round onto the GP loop, and that was the end of his race, pretty much.
Yeah, which is a pity because PMR have still got a chance of winning the independents.
Yeah, they have. It is a slim chance, but it may well happen. We'll see what happens in race 3. Gornall and Osborne then got together for probably the biggest incident of this race, coming down towards Paddock Hill. Both of them side by side along the pit straight, and under braking, one or the other moves towards each other, basically.
I think it's really poor by both. They were knocking 7 shades out of each other in the preceding lap, banging door handles unnecessarily, and they neither of them gave each other enough space. I don't know. Gornall does get the touch that pushes him off. Can he stop the car? I don't know. It looks like he goes for a second bite of the cherry, but then equally, where can Gornall go? He's stuck on the outside. But neither gave each other anywhere near enough space, and all it's done is basically mean Osborne is very unlikely to come out in race 3, given the rear end damage, and it meant that it completely sort of declimatized the race because we had to have a safety car for
Yeah, as you
4 odd
say,
laps.
there was substantial rear end damage. Luckily, he went into the tyres backwards, like Camish did at Donington. But the crumple zone on the back of that Focus is fairly large by the look of it. So we both doubt that he's going to be out for race 3. For me, it was probably a racing incident. As you say, Gornall didn't really have anywhere that he could go once he was already on the brakes. Both of them were already in the brakes going into Paddock Hill.
It is a racing incident, but it's a very avoidable one.
Yes, it is.
This isn't a lap 1 Colin Turkington racing incident where this is a very avoidable. And for a team that bangs on about how hard it is to make ends meet, that you'd have thought they'd be a little bit more sympathetic and not creating those kind of accidents for other teams on the grid.
Yep.
So yeah, to me, it's just really poor. I'm really disappointed in both drivers and both teams for that, because it's so avoidable, and it's just really poor, and it just reflects badly on the championship, which has been up at such a high standard all year, racing wise. That is just poor and not needed at all.
So, as you said, the safety car was out. We managed to get one racing lap to the finish, but Butcher had a problem on restart and managed to drop all the way back down to 19th, which was a shame. After he's pushed through the field, looked like he was going to get possibly into that reverse grid draw.
Dark horse the championship.
Letting you down just one final time.
Well, it's race 3 yet.
So yeah, that was unfortunate for him. But Watson managed to finish the race and become Jack Sears champion. Meanwhile, out front, I mean, we didn't see much of them, did we?
No.
Both Sutton and Ingram were off into the distance.
Different postcodes.
Running their own race.
On the medium tyre, no one could keep up with them.
Yeah.
I think that's a slight concern at Napa, that Camish couldn't keep up with the front 2.
Yeah. Especially as he was on soft as well.
Yeah. And I think Camish is... How harsh will I go? I think Camish is flattered to deceive a lot this season. And I don't really think it's worked out at all for him in these 2 years at Napa so far. I think he has disappointed in the 2 years, if I'm being perfectly brutal and blunt about things. Sutton is a formidable teammate. I completely accept that. But has he done a great deal more than Dan Rowbottom this year? I don't think he really has.
Championship-wise, it suggests that he has done more. But Rowbottom has done a lot of the teamwork aspect, hasn't he? And been there to let people through.
His first season at the team, having to cope with the comments about the demise of Dynamics, all because of Rowbottom's moves. I don't know, Camish, he's got a podium this race, but I've just not been that impressed this season or last season. It just feels that, yes, Sutton is ridiculous, obviously different level, fine, completely get that. But this race in particular, I think, highlights that he was nowhere to these front 2. And I think that's a real big concern.
I don't think luck has been on his side this season. He's had some incidents that have certainly not been his fault, and mechanical issues over the last 2 seasons that he just can't account for.
That's fair, but that doesn't explain today, does it?
No, he's certainly not up with the pace that Sutton is, but very few drivers are.
Agreed, but to not even be close in race pace is a concern, I think. But,
So then, to round off round 29, second race of the weekend classification, Sutton won fairly comfortably from Ingram from Camish. Collard had a decent race, got up to 4th. Bobby Thompson managed to hold on to 5th despite a possible ride height infringement that was mentioned. But for now, we see that he's kept that position. Jake Hill, with his illness, finished in 6th. Cook in 7th. Rowbottom 8th, Jelly 9th, Dan Lloyd in 10th, followed by Aidan Moffat, who had a really good charge through the field up to 11th, Tom Chilton 12th, Morgan 13th, Patterson 14th, and Gornall in 15th. And the ball pulled out for the reverse grid draw was Jelly in 9th.
Yeah, which is an interesting end to the weekend. Can Jelly go on to get a final win for WSR this year? Be crucial in the manufacturers. He's not scoring points for them.
Nope.
That's has been weird this weekend. I wish they'd do it every weekend to tell us who it is that's been elected.
Yes,
because obviously Louise sort of half mentioned it on the grid that it's Jake and it's Colin. It'd be useful for that, because I don't think everyone will realise that they can only elect 2 drivers each weekend to score the points. So I think that would be quite useful to know next year to who it is.
Either that, or just say, okay, the highest placed 2 highest placed drivers score the points for that round or something.
Yeah,
it would make it a lot easier to follow
Yeah.
the other championships that are there. Obviously, we know how to follow the main championship, the independents, all the individual championships are fairly easy. But for those team championships, it might make it a little bit easier for the casual viewer.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that entirely.
But let's move on to race 3.
Now, it wouldn't be a 2023 season without there being a team hard problem at some point of the weekend. And of course, Bobby hadn't had an issue so far, so it's his turn to have a problem on the grid, electrical problem or something that's affecting the hybrid. He was able to get it going, which is good news. He was quite upbeat about it. He had a green light on his screen, which meant he was happy to go racing. But
do you reckon they have a big clatter wheel in the garage that they just spin and they go, "Oh, you've got the issue now"? Yeah.
See other podcasts for comments.
Yeah.
Carice wasn't talking off hard. Carice wasn't able to make it to the grid. The problem with his car, although to be fair, it wasn't fixed from race 2.
Yeah.
Although I'm not being a mechanic, I'm slightly surprised it wasn't fixed for race 2, given that I'd argue that on the surface at least, Osborne's, Pearson's, and Turkin's all looked worse.
Yes and no. I think they all had very similar suspension damage, but we know that those other teams have a hell of a lot more resources than Team Hard.
I'm amazed that Osborne got out and Carice didn't.
Yeah.
That's a surprise.
That is true.
But anyway, Jelly was on pole, and the best start did come from him. He managed to hook up the rear-wheel drive really nicely. Rowbottom just seemed to forget all
smokescreen.
Yeah, logic on how to drive a touring car.
Yeah,
potentially false start, potentially a little bit of movement before the start, and then managed to smash the wheel spin button and completely sort of went sideways rather than forwards, which allowed Jake Hill to go straight through.
Yeah, it does look like there might be a few start line infringements which are going to be looked at after the race, so it sounds like the stewards got a little bit of a long evening.
Yeah, but just like at Silverstone, we'll never hear the result because I'm still waiting to hear the clarification about Colin Turkington's start line infringement from race 3 at Silverstone, which I'm still not heard any formal response to. Great communication as ever. Moffat was the first casualty of the actual race, spun out at Druids. Replay showed that Morgan tapped him wide, and as he tried to rejoin or control the slide, he careered into the side of Dobble, which completely wrecked the front suspension. Took it all in good stead, and I hope he enjoyed his big beer. He looked positively thrilled to be out of the race.
He did look... that is the most excited I've seen Moffat in several seasons.
Yeah, I don't think he's been a happy place for him this year, if I'm being totally honest. I think he was quite glad to have the season over, to be honest with you. As the safety car was coming out, it looked as if Josh Cook had overtaken Jake Hill before safety car boards. He maintained afterwards that it was before the board at Sheen Curve.
Yeah, when they have the lights come off on their dash and when you get the notification on top of the screen, it's always difficult to correlate whether they're at exactly the same times or whether there is a difference between the two systems. But yeah, we'll see if anything comes of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the touring cars really doesn't help itself at times. And for inexplicable reasons, on the final race of the season, rather than show us any replays of what had happened, we went to a break. It's embarrassing. Ted Kravitz has to talk.
We did get replays once they came back.
But why do you have to go for a break? When there's a break in F1, they make Ted Kravitz talk for 4 hours. He has to talk. To be fair, they talk a lot of time nonsense at Sky, but they never go to a break. No. They have Ted interviewing a bug or talking about how the blue on this year's Williams differs from the blue from last year, and whether that makes any difference in the speed. And of course it doesn't, but it's better than going to look at sad donkeys or wanting a guide dog or for the 54th time today. It's not as if you don't get breaks in the touring cars as it is. It's embarrassing. It's the top level motorsport. Embarrassing.
They need all that sponsorship money with those adverts. That's the only thing that I can think of.
And Sky doesn't.
Well, not when people pay a subscription for it.
Come on.
That's why we get so many adverts.
Come on.
It's because there isn't.
Yeah, I get that, but come on, in the middle of a race. It annoys me when they do it in a support race, but this is supposed to be the pinnacle of the whole day's racing, and it's the last one of the season. And you're talking how difficult it is for drivers to get deals and that because they need the exposure. Well, that's not helping any of them, is it? They've taken off cars from having 5 minutes or so on screen time.
Yeah.
Embarrassing. Anyway.
It wouldn't be a race review without us getting annoyed by something.
It's embarrassing. Imagine Sky Sports cut into Yeah, because we're debating. Imagine over the VAR decision a couple of weeks ago, which took a long time to sort out. Oh, we're not going to sit here and work it out. We're just going to go to a very short break. It's embarrassing. Nonsense.
What happened next, mate?
Johnny controlled the restart in an odd but okay fashion. Decided that the best course of attack was to block the entire field, so back the entire field up into one another.
Absolute last moment, wasn't it, before the safety car line when he actually went?
But he did go,
Yeah.
and he went well, and he surprisingly caught Cook napping a little bit, despite the fact, as you say, that he went at the last possible moment, so you're surprised there wasn't napping. But yep. Then after the first safety car restart, all hell broke loose for the rest of the race. Really, Cook went through into the race lead at absolute ease. Jelly decided to forget how to defend, basically.
Yep.
Just allowed him straight through. Turkington decided that he had a problem with me saying he can't race properly, but decided to punt Aaron Taylor-Smith as hard as humanly possible to break the toe link. So that's good. Aaron Taylor-Smith out with that. A bit more of a racier, aggressive side to Colin that, he decided to show right at the last minute, which is interesting. Sutton was then barged off the road by Ingram with a bit of hip and shoulder. Ingram in his defence was trying to avoid the absolute childish behaviour of Rowbottom and Collard, who descended into lumping seven shades of you-know-what out of each other, banging door handles. Rowbottom trying to punt Collard off down the bottom of Graham Hill. Yeah, Graham Hill.
I thought that was Thompson and Camish.
Well, they were also
also at it as well, weren't they?
They were. Sutton was barged off and had to come into the pit to remove the quick fit banner that had sort of adorned itself at the front of the car.
Yep.
Hill then decided that he'd had other track limits, they're boring, and decided that the best overtake he could do was to go over the grass.
He was all four wheels off, wasn't he, when he was going past Cook there? Three wide, out the back of the circuit. I'm like, what's going on?
What a track limit say?
Well, they're not monitored there, mate. That doesn't matter.
No, and without going over old ground again, that just proves how ridiculous the track limit rule has been this year. That's fine.
Yeah.
But Collard lost a race win earlier in the season for something that's nowhere near as bad as that.
Yeah.
But fine, whatever. Yeah.
I'm messaging him on Twitter going, oh, look at this.
I can't wait to see Collard's reaction to that when he sees it. But there we go. Thompson then fell down the order with a problem, probably linked to what he had on the grid at the start of the race.
Possibly.
And then I think this is probably the most stupidest moment I've seen all season, and it really made me angry. More angry than the ad break in many ways. Is Gamble,
very angry. Then.
Gamble just losing his head and decided that he was so desperate to get into further up the points that he was going to torpedo Jade into Druid. Jade was running really well in this race. He was highest 10th at one point, and was comfortably in the points and was going to easily score points, her first points of the year. And then Gamble happened.
Absolute mind blank.
Just seemed to
all locked up, going for a gap that was never going to be open
with far too much speed.
Yeah,
just utter idiocy in Gamble.
Wrecked Jade's rear suspension, wrecked his front suspension, and brought another safety car out.
It's really poor.
Yeah.
I think that's the worst I've seen all year. I know there's a bit of recency bias attached to that, but dare I say that's Aidan Neat levels of racing? It's Andy Neat, sorry.
Andy Neat.
Neat-esque, anyway. Yeah.
Okay.
Bit too strong.
Possibly.
You can cut that out.
What's next?
Sutton was on a recovery drive, doing the best that he could do, having had to come through the pit lane, and because it's Ash Sutton and he's in a Napa Ford rocket ship, he was able to come back through and get into the points.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll discuss the ramifications of that on the predictions pod and driver grades pod. The only last sort of interesting thing in this race was that we saw a good move by Tom Ingram on Dan Rowbottom for fourth position with a very nice last-minute lunge, shall we say, but a clean lunge
very clean
into Paddock Hill Bend, which meant that Jake Hill took the final race win of the season, which from Josh Cook in second place, Stephen Jelly, I think his best result of the year, in third, Tom Ingram fourth, Dan Rowbottom in fifth, Ricky Collard sixth, Dan Lloyd seventh, Morgan in eighth, Camish in ninth, Colin Turton from the back of the grid to 10th, good drive by him.
Really well.
Dexter Patterson into 11th, good points for him, and that meant he would go on to finish joint second in the Jack Sears, which was a really good effort by Dexter. Darryl DeLine into the points again. He got a 12th.
Brilliant drive, just keeping out of trouble.
Kept his head really well in a pack that was getting a little bit silly at times. Ash Sutton recovered all the way up to 13th. It's a good final result for the incoming champion. Mikey Doble into 14th. I think his time will definitely come. He'll be eligible for the Jack Sears next year as well. Rory Butcher took the final points paying position. And actually, give a little shout out to Osborne, to be fair to him, from the back of the grid with a car that probably wasn't entirely fixed into 17th position. Not bad at all, given
No.
given what we imagined was the case. So all of this means that Ash Sutton, as we knew coming into the weekend, is the champion, 446 points, which I think is tied of the most, which is Colin Turkington's total, best total. Tom Ingram, 46 points behind. That might be the biggest gap of the last 10 years. I'll look it up before we do our
Quite big
driver grades and predictions pod tomorrow. Jake Hill secured third in the championship by quite a long way over Colin Turkington, 60 points.
That's big.
Changing the guard, mate. Changing of the guard.
Very much so.
Colin Turkington fourth. Josh Cook, really, to be fair, given how poor that car has been this season, Cook has absolutely dragged the arse out of that into fifth position overall. So fair play to him. Dan Cam, a little bit disappointing in sixth, and he only just beat his teammate Dan Rowbottom.
28 points.
28 points. So I couldn't see the grid properly.
That's
Take it
right.
back. Camish in sixth. Rowbottom in seventh. Ricky Collard, who would have thought he'd be the best of the Toyota drivers, in eighth with 217 points. Adam Morgan, top 10 on his debut season of WSRs, not bad.
It's kind of where we expect Morgan to be, but I very much hope that next season, now he's comfortable in the team, that he's then going to kick on a little bit.
Absolutely. And then rounding out the top 10, Rory Butcher. And I just want to give a shout out to Aaron Taylor Smith, 11th. That's a really good effort in that PMR car. Really, really good. And unfortunately, not everybody scored points this year. So Will Powell, if you remember, he was in the series earlier on in the year.
The less said about him, the better, probably.
Well, no. Jack Butel didn't score any points. Halstead did, but then it ends up on -5 owing to engine change. And poor old Jade Edward also on -5, was definitely taking points in that last race today, which is a crying shame. Have we got the updates to the teams, manufacturers, anything yet, Sam?
Yep.
We do. So manufacturers, somehow Alliance Racing managed to do it, because we're sitting in the pits. I thought that's game over.
Yeah.
But they're somehow Alliance Racing, Ford, Napa, Car Racing, Blue, managed to get 802 points overall, which meant they beat BMW by a cool 5 points. 4? Well, no, Ford are tied. They beat them by 5.
No, they've beaten them by 4. 798 to 802.
Okay. A 4-point gap back to BMW and Accelerate Motorsport on 699, so a fair way back there. Into the teams, Napa Racing won that as well, so they've won everything they could do apart from the Jack Sears, which is really impressive. They absolutely dominated that, finishing well ahead of Bristol Street Motors, Team BMW in third position. Slightly surprised, just before you scroll down, that One Motorsport beat Toyota Gazoo Racing. But
a couple of engine changes in there which have pulled them back behind, because the difference was only 6 points at the end. Absolutely.
Josh Cook took the drivers' the Independence Trophy, by a considerable margin over Aaron Taylor Smith. Bobby Thompson ended up finishing 8th because he couldn't compete the whole season, which is a real big pity. The Independence teams wasn't as close as we'd hoped it would be in the end. Ron Motorsport won that by a fair way over Car Store Power Max Racing. Finally, into the Jack Sears then for 2023. Andrew Watson with 451 points for Mikey Doval and Dexter Patterson, both tied on 422. Osborne will be disappointed, I think, to finish 4th overall. Yeah. I will say that I think that it's been a really good season for the Jack Sears. You look at
definitely.
You look at the calibre of the drivers in there. The top 3 are all very good drivers indeed. Ronan Pearson could have finished a lot higher.
Yeah,
his time it was definitely coming. He's had a lot of bad luck this year. Darryl DeLion has done pretty well coming into the series.
Very
difficult
much so.
Circumstances, scored well at times. So, yeah, I think Jack Sears is very strong this year. Congratulations to Andrew Watson, who of course wouldn't be eligible next year anyway, having taken a podium.
Well, one last thing to do for this review then is to have a look at our driver awards for the weekend. Russ, who's the driver of the weekend for you?
Driver of the year, driver of most weekends, it's Ash Sutton.
Yeah.
It's 12 wins in a season is phenomenal. I think that's tied of Alan Menu's 12. It's beaten Giovanardi's.
Damn impressive, isn't it?
I think they said on the commentary that he's had 20 out of 30 podiums.
Yeah. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
When you consider that those 10 are probably reverse grid, then that's ridiculous. He's 2/3 of his season have been on the podium. That's mental. He's not had any sort of mechanical issues all year, which is really good.
Couple of incidents, start line incidents, which I'm sure he'll clear up for next season to come back and defend his title.
Imagine if he hadn't. He'd have won it by Croft.
Yeah. Bit of a stretch, but yeah, I get what you mean.
Knockhill. Could have won a Knockhill. Anyway, so Sutton for me.
Yep, same here.
The comeback in race 3, to go through a pit in the touring cars, and then to get into the
I
points.
think
just shows...
everything that surmises it was in race 2 at Silverstone.
Oh, absolutely. But in terms of this weekend,
Yeah.
that recovery in race 3.
Yeah.
Yes, he lucked out the fact there was a safety car, but
and there was a lot of chaos.
Yeah, but he's then got bad luck by the fact that Ingram decided that he was going to hip and shoulder him for no reason whatsoever. So, my villain of the weekend. I'm sorry, I went in a little bit on the review there. I'm going again. Gamble. It's no points scored where the Toyota looked really good this weekend.
Yep.
Collard was quick, Butcher was quick, Gamble wasn't. Didn't score points, and then just a brainless, brain dead. We're going to call it move on Edwards. Just don't like to see that. I don't contact accidents happen.
Yeah,
but that's something like that, which is I said that the Gornell and Osborne was avoidable. Well, that looked like an absolute
definitely
in comparison. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's gamble for me.
My villain of the weekend is Butcher. Considering how much pace he had in that car, he's only scored 1 point this weekend, which I really don't quite understand. From qualifying second to then having such a bad run.
That summed up his season, really, isn't it?
It has, yeah, definitely.
We both agreed on the surprise good, which is Bobby Thompson.
Yep.
Qualified really well, took a podium, did well in race 2. Race 3, the usual hard gremlins hit. You can't go a whole...
Managed it well, though.
Can't go a whole weekend without having a problem. That'd be ludicrous. So, yeah. And then finally, my surprise bad is Aidan Moffat. We both thought that the Honda would go quite well here.
Yeah.
Moffat was struggling all weekend. I mean, to be fair, so was Cook and Edwards as well. But yeah, Moffat in the end, Edwards was on for a good points finish. Yeah. Cook got a podium. Moffat got involved in accidents left, right, and centre.
Yeah, he had a good fight back in race 2.
He did.
But then obviously had that incident in race 3.
Again, not necessarily his fault, but just a bit disappointing.
My surprise bad for the weekend is Aaron Taylor-Smith.
Yeah,
caught up in little incidents, non-finishing race 3, just nowhere near the pace that we've seen in the last 3-4 rounds, especially of the PMR car, and was outdone by both his teammates today.
Well, that is the 2023 season done. We will be back with a full 2023 review once we decided how the format of that is going to work. Obviously, you'll also be able to listen out for us on our Brands Hatch driver grades and predictions, find out who won between me and Sam, giving nothing away of my facial expressions here at all, but find out how that went down. And yeah, we'll then probably do some work in the off season as well. But have you got any final thoughts about Brands Hatch specifically?
About Brands Hatch specifically, I think the chaos that ensued in race 2/race 3 is kind of something that I'd like to see a little bit more of. I know it's bigger on the repair bills and stuff like that, but that absolute bumper to bumper racing that we had in race 3, where you had the top 12 separated by 5-6 seconds, is something that I want to see more of, and it made for an exciting weekend.
Yeah, my final thoughts are that, I suppose it relates to brands, but also the bigger picture is that put a number on it. How many is he going to win? Because the man is ridiculous.
Yeah, he certainly is.
Absolutely crazy. One last thing before we go in is a heartfelt thank you for everyone that has listened to us, watched us, clicked on our page, liked a post, shared a post, commented on a post. Yeah, it's been a really good season for us on a podcast personal level. We've grown again, which is always nice to see. Obviously, we launched the YouTube channel as well, which will keep pushing down your throats until...
Hence you can see us now.
Hence you can see us. You can see when I get angry. But no, we've been really, really happy of how the season has gone on the whole. A few gremlins along the way, as you'd expect, for two complete amateurs operating out of a high-tech studio, as you can see.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, thank you to everybody for your support throughout the year. It has been incredible, and we've really enjoyed debating, talking with you on social media and at tracks, etc. So it's we look forward to seeing you all in 2024.
Yep, do keep your eyes peeled on any podcasts that we have out between now and the end of the year. We will, of course, bring you up to date with any moves and changes in the off season. But for now, we'll see you soon.
Make sure you follow the social media, because that's where you'll find out about the podcasts.